I honestly stood there and watched as my own children threw my dinner into the trash, laughing about how the garbage man shouldn't mind eating with the rest of the filth. My own kids, the ones I had slaved for over 2 decades to provide for, looked at me with such pure, unadulterated disgust that it felt like a knife to the heart. They didn't just hate my job, they hated me because of it. They treated me like a stray animal that had wandered into their high-class lives by mistake. I was their father, their provider, their protector, but to them, I was just a walking biohazard that needed to be hidden from their friends. But let me tell you, the look on their faces when they realized exactly how I was going to teach them where their perfect life came from was worth every second of the pain. Was I wrong for what I did? Tell me, would you have pushed the button and let the world they loved crumble around them if they treated you like human refuse? My name is Arthur, and for 25 years, I've been the guy who wakes up at 4 a.m. to make sure your streets are clean. I'm a sanitation worker, a garbage man. It's a job that demands thick skin, a strong stomach, and a complete lack of ego. I've handled things you wouldn't believe, from rotting food to discarded lives, and I did it all with a smile because it meant my family never had to worry. My wife, Sarah, was my rock. We built a life together on a foundation of hard work. We weren't wealthy, but we had a beautiful home in a nice suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where people care about their lawns and the brand of car in their driveway. That was the problem. My children, Emily and Josh, grew up in that environment, and, somewhere along the way, they started inhaling the fumes of elitism. When they were little, I was a hero. They'd hear the rumble of the truck and run to the window, waving frantically as I pulled up. I'd honk the horn, and their faces would light up like it was Christmas. But as the teenage years hit, that light went out, replaced by a cold, hard shadow of embarrassment. Emily started first. She was a cheerleader, popular, and obsessed with the aesthetic of her life. Suddenly, my work truck was a monstrosity that she didn't want parked in the driveway. She'd beg me to park 3 blocks away and walk home so her friends wouldn't see it. Then came the comments about the smell. I'd walk in after a 12-hour shift, exhausted to my core, and instead of a welcome home, Dad, I'd get, "Ugh, can you go shower? You're making the whole kitchen smell like a landfill." It wasn't just the smell, it was the status. At her private school, which I paid for by working triple shifts and holiday bonuses, the other dads were plastic surgeons, corporate lawyers, and tech moguls. When people asked what her father did, she told them I was a logistics manager for waste management services. She couldn't even say the words. Josh followed her lead. He stopped asking me for help with his projects and started treating me like a servant. If I tried to give him advice, he'd scoff and say, "What do you know? You literally pick up trash for a living." It was a slow poison, dripping into our home life until the atmosphere was toxic. Sarah tried to defend me, but they'd just roll their eyes and call her enabling. The breaking point happened on a Tuesday. It was a scorching hot day, over 100 degrees, and the humidity was unbearable. I had been on the back of that truck since before dawn, dealing with bags that were bursting and liquids that I didn't even want to identify. I was dehydrated, my back was screaming, and I just wanted to sit down for 10 minutes. When I walked through the door, Emily was hosting a planning committee for some school gala. 6 of her richest, snobbiest friends were sitting in our living room. As soon as I stepped in, the room went dead silent. Emily's face turned a shade of crimson I've never seen. One of the girls whispered, "Is that the smell?" Emily didn't even look at me. She stood up and said, "Sir, the service entrance is around the back. Please leave the delivery and go." I stood there frozen. "Sir? Service entrance?" I was in my own home. I looked at her, and she had this pleading, desperate look in her eyes. Not for my forgiveness, but for me to play along so her secret wouldn't be out. I walked out, not because I was obeying her, but because I was so stunned I couldn't breathe. I sat in my truck in the driveway, the heat radiating off the asphalt, and I cried. I'm a grown man who has dealt with the worst parts of humanity, and I sat there and sobbed because my daughter was so ashamed of me that she'd rather pretend I was a delivery man than admit I was her father. That night, when the guests left, I tried to talk to her. She snapped. She told me that I was ruining her life, that my disgusting job was a stain on her reputation, and that she couldn't wait to go to college and never have to smell me again. Josh piped in, saying he agreed, and that's when they threw my dinner away, laughing about how I was used to the trash anyway. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I had spent my life building a world for them, only for them to use that world as a pedestal to look down on me from. They thought they were better than the man who provided everything they touched. They needed to understand that without the trash, their beautiful world would be a nightmare. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have stayed silent to keep the peace? Or would you have shown them exactly what trash looks like? The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called my supervisor, who is a close friend, and told him I needed a personal day and a massive favor. I told Sarah to stay at her sister's house for the day. I didn't want her to see this. Then I waited. When Emily and Josh came down for breakfast, they were shocked to see me still there. "Why aren't you out playing in the dirt?" Josh joked, grabbing a bowl of cereal. I didn't answer. I just told them both to get in the car. They refused until I told them that if they didn't, I would cut off their cell phone plans, their internet, and their car insurance immediately. Money was the only language they spoke, so I spoke it loud and clear. I didn't take them to the depot. Not yet. First, I took them to the poorest part of the city, a place where the sanitation services had been struggling due to budget cuts. I made them get out of the car. The streets were lined with overflowing bins. The smell was 10 times worse than anything I ever brought home, and rodents were scurrying openly. "This," I said, pointing to the chaos, "is what happens when garbage men don't exist. This is the reality you're so disgusted by." They looked horrified, clutching their designer bags and trying not to step on anything. But I wasn't done. I drove them to the landfill. Not the office, but the actual dumping site. I had arranged for a specialized education session. I handed them both a pair of heavy-duty gloves and a high-visibility vest. "You think my job is beneath you?" I asked, my voice echoing over the mountains of refuse. "Fine. Then you don't get to benefit from it. Since you think trash is so funny, you're going to spend the next 8 hours sorting through it. For every bag you sort, I'll keep one of your luxury items. If you don't finish the pile, I'm selling everything in your rooms and donating the money to the sanitation workers' retirement fund." They cried. They screamed. Emily threatened to call the police, but I reminded her that they were minors and I was their father, and we were on private property with permission. I sat in a lawn chair with a cold bottle of water and watched as my refined children had to dig through the very thing they mocked me for. They saw the needles, the glass, the rotting remains of what people discard. They saw the sheer, back-breaking labor it took to manage the waste of a society that doesn't care. By hour 4, Emily was covered in grime, her expensive manicure ruined, her hair a matted mess. Josh was sweating through his brand-name shirt, his face pale with exhaustion. Then the climax of my plan happened. I had my supervisor bring one of the trucks over, the one I usually drive. I made them stand behind it as the compactor ran. I explained that this machine didn't care about your social status or your cheerleading squad. It just crushed. I told them that my life was the compactor. I took all the trash they gave me, the insults, the shame, the disrespect, and I crushed it down so I could keep moving for them. "But I'm done compacting," I said. "From now on, if you want the life I provide, you will respect the man who provides it. If I hear one more word about my smell, or my truck, or my disgusting job, I will personally drive everything you own to this exact spot and watch the truck crush it into a cube." The ride home was dead silent. They didn't even have the energy to be angry. They were broken. But as the days passed, something miraculous happened. The entitlement began to fade. Emily started working a part-time job at a grocery store, a lowly service job. Josh started helping me wash the truck on weekends. They realized that the smell they hated was the smell of a father's love and sacrifice. They eventually apologized, not with words but with their actions. They saw me as a man for the first time, not a provider bot. I tie up this story by saying that our relationship isn't perfect, but they never hid me again. At Emily's graduation, when the principal asked parents to stand, I stood tall in my work uniform, and Emily looked right at her friends and said, "That's my dad. He keeps the city running." The moral of this story is simple. Never be ashamed of a hard day's work, and never let anyone, especially your own blood, make you feel small for providing a big life. Respect is earned, but it should also be given to those who do the work no one else wants to do. If you think I did the right thing by giving them a reality check, like this video right now. Subscribe if you believe in the dignity of all work, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I want to know if I was too harsh or just harsh enough. I'll see you all in the next story.